Hey everyone, this is History After Hours. It is February 21st, 2018. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and on this podcast, as normal, is Mr. Ron Franklin. And we're going to discuss several topics. We're going to talk about the passing of the great Billy Graham at the age of 99. We're going to talk a little bit about what he must have seen during his life from 1918 to 2018. We're going to talk a little bit about the Florida school shooting and a little bit about maybe some of the reaction to that. We talk about Valentine's Day to some degree because we forgot to talk about that last time. And then, of course, our new segment called Folks You Should Know. We actually talk about two people that you probably don't know unless, of course, you're one of our students. You might know. But that's the podcast. Hope you enjoy. Well, it's a sad day.
Sad day? Why?
Billy Graham.
Oh, Billy Graham. How old was
Graham's
Billy Graham?
99.
That guy, 99.
He didn't quite make it to his birthday this year, but born in 1918. I don't know his birthday. I haven't looked it up, but yeah, 99 years old. Yeah, you got to wonder, man, did he want to just hang in there a few more months, get that birthday in?
You'd want to round that out, wouldn't you? I mean, I would.
John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both just willed themselves to live till the July 4th,
right? Yeah,
50th anniversary.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Which one died first? Jefferson?
Jefferson died, I think, 3 hours before Adams.
Wasn't Adams' last words? Jefferson still lives, or something.
Yeah,
crap
Jefferson
like that.
survives.
Survives, and then he was wrong. Jefferson was already dead. But news travels so slowly.
Yeah, so Billy Graham, let's see. He is one, if not the most influential evangelist, preacher.
Don't you think that he created the evangelical movement in a sense? Because he was, I mean, I don't know, was there TV preaching before him? I mean, I know that, TVs were fairly new when he starts. But
post-World War II, 1940s, he had a radio show that got popular.
All right.
But then the explosion of the television in the 50s.
Yeah, but he would have these massive crowds too, right?
He would sell out football stadiums and have his crusades, the Billy Graham crusades. I remember watching those.
Yeah, on TV. Yeah, I remember.
Johnny Cash and Elvis. I mean, he would have people that come on and do gospel music, and then he would preach. And he apparently has preached to more people than any other human being preacher, period. Over 218 million. Or something like that, something ridiculous.
That's pretty interesting.
So when you think about like early American history and George Whitefield or Jonathan Edwards, a few thousand people saw him preach, maybe, at the most 100,000 people. Yeah. And millions saw. Of course, he had the advantage of television.
Oh, Joe Smith that starts the Mormons, right? Like how many people actually heard him speak, right? I don't know, but he creates a whole sort of branch of faith.
Yeah.
I guess Billy Graham. Well, that's why I was kind of going with the evangelical thing. Does he get credit for that? You think?
I think so. I mean, he's on my top 100 most influential simply because he's the key American evangelist. He helped to push.
And the moral majority kind of idea, right?
That comes in right after that. Now, you had, it's in the 80s where we have the televangelist.
Yeah.
But I think Billy Graham would be the key figure. You had Falwell. That would have been.
Yeah, don't you count him as a televangelist, though?
Probably, yeah.
Because there seems to be some hoodwinkery going on with some of these guys.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Hoodwinkery.
I mean, there was a guy, and I can't remember, there was like Tilson or
Tillman?
Something. There was a guy, Tilden, something, in and around Dallas.
Tilden.
I had some friends who lived in Dallas when I was first out of high school, and I would go down there and visit them. And there was this guy, and I wish I could remember it specifically.
Robert Tilden?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I have to look it up. All right, so anyway. Somebody can correct me on that. But I remember things like they would have these big giant billboards, and it was like, you just got a blessing because you looked at my billboard. And then he would have on the TV, he would put his hand against the camera or whatever, and then you put your hand on the screen and you get the blessings from me. And the funniest thing I ever saw, because I actually went, they did like this marketing thing, because again, if you're in Dallas, you're getting some of the programming from me.
Right.
And you could order a placemat kind of looking thing that goes beside your bed, and it had his feet outlined And I don't remember if it was feet or if it was shoes. But the idea was that you could swing out of bed, put your feet in his feet, and walk with him and Jesus all day long. And that was supposed to give you a nice blessing. And it's a bargain at only like $20, right? And so little old ladies spending their pensions on all kinds of things this guy's trying to sell him. And he ended up getting in trouble, I think, for the whole ministry sort of fell apart. But I don't know if it was tax issues or something happened.
Well, there were several that went down in the early 90s, and then the guy in the late 80s. I have sinned against you. Swaggart?
Jimmy Swaggart.
Jimmy Swaggart.
Yeah. And who was the one that had the wife that was always, like, they were making fun of her? The Bakers. Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. The Saturday Night Live did a thing where, like, she's got the makeup running down her face because she's always crying. Who was Oral Roberts? Do you remember this when he told his followers that God was going to call him home, and if he didn't get like $2 million sent to him by such and such date, and then when it didn't come in, like he formally announced that God had postponed his death.
Right.
And they finally got over that. Again, I don't remember how many millions he was trying to raise, but just things like that. Which
we don't want to make a super correlation between Billy Graham.
I'm not trying to. No, I was actually trying to make a difference, right? Like, so the point I was going to make eventually here, as I was kind of rambling on, was that Billy Graham avoided that kind of.
Yeah,
crap,
I know that it was a little controversial during the early civil rights movement because people wanted to know what he thought. You know, he's a Christian leader, Southern Baptist, Protestant, evangelical leader, and a lot of people asked him about desegregation, and he wasn't. I think he was kind of on the fence, I guess you'd say, and so he took a lot of flack for that later once the civil rights movement started kicking in, and then he embraced, I think, civil rights.
Read that early on when they were, he wouldn't address, multi-ethnic crowds and things like that. So I just wondered, at what point did that actually stop? When did he sort of embrace that? When did he? I
think eventually he publicly came out and supported Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, okay.
So we're talking about 1960, 61. Like, it was after desegregation, but it's when the marches were going on. I think he did somewhere in there. And once again, I would have to do research. But no matter what you say, he was influential. His voice was heard as the leading Christian, voice during the time. And his son now, Franklin Graham, a big supporter of Trump.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was
to get the evangelicals on the Trump train.
How is he? Is he still a really strong proponent for Trumpism? I wonder.
I saw a tweet by him a few months ago where he was still but I haven't. I don't know. I assume. I guess.
I wonder how that jives in your mind, and I've seen other people sort of call out evangelicals because there's a lot of sort of hardcore things that the president has said against minority groups in different countries, and doesn't seem to be very supportive of certain civil liberties for certain people. Seemingly, again, I don't know what he actually feels in his heart, but that's some of the public statements he's made really kind of it seems that way. And so I wonder, do a lot of them support him because he's, on the anti-abortion bandwagon?
I think that's the only reason.
Is that a big thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Evangelicals had to support somebody, and he was on that. And I think that was, a lot of evangelicals are single issue now. It's abortion. That's going to be the thing. So if you are against abortion, they're on your side. Somebody did tweet a picture of him holding the Holy Bible, an evangelical Christian. And, he said, isn't it nice to have someone in the Oval Office who promotes openly Christian values? And it's like,
well, these are the same people that thought Obama was a Muslim too, right?
Right, that he was promoting the Quran. So it's all crazy. We're living in a bizarre world to a degree, with a celebrity president. But it's interesting to think about the reaction eventually. But anyhow, I just wanted to start that off.
Well, do you think that what's the legacy then for him? The idea that for Billy Graham, specifically, that he began this movement, which and actually preached to so many people. I know he authored a lot of books too, right? I don't know how many, but I'm sure there are at least dozens.
Oh, dozens. And I think eventually he's going to be the tie between the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, and modern, I guess you would call Christianity. Not really liberal Protestantism, but, every now and then we have to figure out with new social movements or new scientific advancements how to square your faith with other events, new things that come along. no matter what it is, whether it's war or, whatever. Christians, by and large, are pretty supportive of war. And if you got to square that with Jesus's teachings about peace. You got to figure, and I think his getting a secular, more modern Christian beliefs into the mainstream, I think that's probably where it's going to end up, especially embracing civil rights and women's rights.
You said he's on your wall of cool people. He's number what?
Wall of influence I have a 100 most influential Americans. We just covered him, so he's probably in the 80s, 81, 82. And I it's hard to judge, but there's two things that definitely are influential: science and religion. Especially on people's lives, behavior, thoughts, actions, what influences you. And religion, apparently over 1 million people were converted during his preachings. So if you just take that and then their families and just exponentially line that out, let's say that's the number, that's influential.
Was he was busy globally too, not just here in the United States, right? Or was it predominantly
all
here?
I know about really is the American stuff, but I'm sure.
I wonder if you count him in the sort of the history of influential, just use Christianity for the starting point,
right?
Not just like people on the planet, but specifically Christians. I would assume then, since he reached so many people, then he had such a heavy influence that he would be counted in historically as one of the most. Right. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like one of the most prominent advancers of Christian faith,
Mm-hmm.
or Protestantism specifically.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I would assume that. I mean, we are still in 2018 one of the most religious countries on the planet.
If Protestants were willing to embrace something like sainthood, do you think that he would qualify?
Oh, he'd have to. Yeah. I mean, he would be up there for sure with some of the other Protestants.
Reagan.
Reagan.
Right. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, I'm being funny. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think you'd have to put him. He's the, as far as, I mean, who's the guy now? Who's the famous Protestant preacher? He has a church home. He got squints a lot. Oh, what is his name?
You talking about the mega church guy?
Yeah.
Oh, what is that guy's name? Yeah, they got some flack when they didn't open the doors quickly enough for the Houston flood refugees, right? Well, yeah, what is that guy's name? Joel Osteen. Okay, that's that guy.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's a big. I think Billy Graham. I mean, man, have you had anybody post World War II that's more important?
He was born in 1918. That guy's seen everything in the contemporary age, basically, right? Both. I mean,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been old enough to understand World War, but he could have possibly, even as a young child, seen the ramifications of what World War I had caused, right?
Yeah.
He was born when Woodrow Wilson was president. He's seen both rounds of Red Scares in this country. He's seen the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, basically, and then Russia revamp itself, modern day. He's seen the rise of communist China. He's seen the Vietnam War. He's seen the Korean conflict. Like you said, feminism, civil rights. Like this guy's seen a lot in his lifetime. And
if you live to be that old and you died this year, you've seen more change in your life than any 100 years, right?
Yeah, the birth of the internet.
Exhaust on the moon.
Modernized electricity, grid systems.
He was born before women had the right to vote nationally.
Wow. That's to be alive that long in this era. I think you're right. To have seen so much dramatic change, technologically, politically, economically, socially.
He saw the complete rise and fall of communism.
Yeah.
With room to spare. Wow.
Interesting. All right. So yeah.
There's something we didn't talk about last time, and I'm. Please make sure that you're sending us stuff at History After Hours on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. We need to check. I need to keep making sure I'm checking people's questions. But we omitted Valentine's Day.
Oh.
We recorded our last podcast on Valentine's Day, and we didn't talk about it at all. Fan or not a fan of Valentine's Day?
Yeah, I like it.
I like it as long as your Valentine is cool.
What do you mean?
Man. I mean, the card industry, the flowers, the present, the teddy bears, the chocolate. My wife is awesome. She's like, look, you can get me. I mean, and she's very appreciative. And I do try to send her flowers or show something special on Valentine's Day. But she likes useful gifts too on Valentine's Day.
Oh, really?
Something that
practical?
she could, whether it's a gift card or something practical.
What I don't like to see are people who feel only obligated to use that day to sort of display their affection for one another and then forget about it the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Right? Because my wife and I have a very solid relationship on that manner where we're into each other all year. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so it seems haphazard and really disingenuous, honestly. It is an industry. I mean, you got to grant that, right? So
Right.
the idea that we're going to sell more flowers, more roses specifically on that day, and we jack the prices up, and you can get real cynical with that really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea of people showing each other and being demonstrative in how they care about each other. But at the same time, be careful because it becomes meaningless if it's just that one day. So I would encourage people to be, more proactive yearly,
Right.
and don't just wait for Valentine's Day. So I mean, like I said, yes, I like it, but I really kind of wish people wouldn't just rely on that one day to show each other what they care, what they think about each other, and how they care. So anyway,
that's a good point. And it's for the kids too. My wife's so great because she bought all the kids Valentine's Day stuff and all that, and they love that. When I was a kid, the only Valentines I got maybe would have been my classmates in school.
Yeah, was it massive pressure on the little kids though? You think to hand out who's going to get? Because everybody's gonna get one. That's generally the idea. But then maybe some kid doesn't. Some mom miscounted when the little,
no!
You get the little
PC culture.
Oh no, little Johnny didn't get.
It's bullying.
Then, I mean, it doesn't mean anything because you're little kids and you don't understand much. But the whole idea about recognition of you as a person, I think there's a weird, rush to validate.
Oh yeah.
But to me, that's just again part of the industry. I think, again, I don't want to get cynical. Oh my God.
We're old. This is what we're supposed to do.
Curmudgeonly. I don't want to be that guy. No, I mean, so, yeah, but I remember being a little kid in a school and going, oh, today's that day. And does somebody really, because especially little kids, like, does so-and-so like me? And you get remember kids would pass notes, do you like me? Check yes or no on the box. Like, I would see stuff like that. Or they'd make these little paper doodads that open and fold in different ways. And they go,
it had numbers on it.
Yeah, you choose the number, this and that, and then you go to the next thing and flip the flap or whatever. Magic 8 ball, does so-and-so like me? I don't know, whatever. It's just kind of funny.
That is interesting how they do it in schools, more than just families or what we do for our wives and stuff like that. What you do. This is what you do.
Is it propaganda for Valentine's industry card makers and whatnot? Is that what we're doing?
Sure.
Are we just indoctrinating children to think that they have to buy cards?
Maybe.
Again, that's cynical. I don't want to be that guy.
It would be great if I could say, hey, here's what you do. You surprise them. Do it on a different day. Do it before, a week before. But the problem is you're going to get the gift. Then whoever your significant other is, they're going to feel bad because they didn't get you anything yet.
Who feels more pressure on Valentine's Day? You think it's men or women?
Oh, it's got to be the guys.
You sure?
Well, the women, what if they go to work and all the other women get
That's kind of what I'm saying.
And they're like, I hope my dumb husband sends me something. So, I don't know. I think it's pressure for both. But I think if you have a good communication, it doesn't turn into that whole.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. But I'm not typically like birthdays and whatever. Like, I'm not a card guy. I don't want to receive cards. I don't I've never, even as a kid, I'm like, okay, awesome, thanks. But it's never really as good to me as someone saying something to me directly. Yeah, I mean, if they're distant, right? I don't get to see them for a while. They send me a little thing. Cool, that's a note. I get that. But if you're gonna show up and just hand me a thing, like, I'd rather you not. Just talk to me. I'd rather the company be special than you think that you've got to buy some folded crease of cardboard that is going to express how you feel. I heard a stand-up talk
about, like, guys receive cards and then they're just simply counting how long I have to hold on to this before I throw it away.
I don't keep them. I never have. But I'm maybe unusual in that aspect. Some people really do like those and keep those, and more power to them. But I don't know. I just never really got it.
Kevin James, I don't know if you know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
He has a great bit about Valentine. Like, women will spend all day picking out the perfect card. And he said, guys, we do it like we're handing out mail. We just throw it at them. Catch. Hope you like that. I barely read it. I'm the same way. I don't want cards. I would
I want to do a good job picking out something, because my wife does appreciate cards, and I want to do a good job for her because I care how she reacts. But to receive something like that, I could care less. Like, I just want us to be solid and happy. That's my thing.
I made a cake.
You made a cake?
I went out. I bought her favorite ingredients. I got her favorite coffee that we didn't have. I'm not a baker by any means, but I made her a cake. And I'm pretty proud. And I had to do it on the sly while her and the kids were gone. So that's a rare moment.
How does the house not smell like cake?
Oh no! When she came in, it was ready.
Okay.
I had to try to do it before they got home.
Oh.
And it went it went well.
You're like smuggling ingredients into the house when she's not
but
looking.
But she liked it because I got her one of her favorite types of cakes. I got her favorite type of coffee. I had everything ready, so I like to put some effort into it. I think that's all they want, just a little effort. I
think a lot of dudes would be better well served just to show that they thought about something. Right. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be fancy. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Like I've seen, my wife and I have been together 30 years. We dated 5 years through college, and then we've been married 25. And that's what we learned pretty early on, is that thoughtfulness matters more than anything else. And so if there's any lesson to be had from this particular conversation, hey, dudes listening, be thoughtful. That's really all women want from you in the short term. You know what I'm saying?
Because flowers today, you can 2 clicks on the internet.
That's not thoughtful.
Yeah, and you just have them delivered. You're not really doing it. But I went out to Walmart and got ingredients for this thing and had powder on my face. The 9 yards.
You see the commercial that was running right around Valentine's Day where the guy was like, or I guess it was an anniversary thing. It was a happy anniversary, honey. And he made her this dinner, and she looks towards the kitchen and like 2 tons of crap's piled up in the sink, and she's just like, and he brings her face slowly back to his, and she's got this destroyed look, and she's like, oh my God, I don't remember what the commercial was even for now, but
that
was
right,
funny.
Though,
like now you got to go be thoughtful and go clean that crap up.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
anyway,
I'm with you.
I don't mean the woman, I mean the guy that made it, just to make sure people knew what I was talking about.
Okay. I don't want to drag this out, but of course we had the horrible another school shooting
on Valentine's Day.
Yep. And of course we haven't had a podcast since then, so let's talk about it. Right. We've got students protesting now. Mm-hmm. Is this different? Do you feel like this school shooting might affect change simply because the kids are organized and are speaking out?
I heard somebody talking about this, and I was curious about the train of thought. When the Sandy Hook thing happened, all those kids were, elementary age, and so they couldn't really be very proactive at that age. Their parents could speak out, but then there's these weird people who are out there who are like these conspiracy minded. Well, Sandy Hook never really happened, and those kids never existed, and those parents are lying, and it's just a conspiracy to overthrow gun people. Okay, so that's stupid, but anyway. But so this one, and with all of the school shootings we've had, we're nearly numb to it, I think, in certain ways. I was asking somebody earlier today when we were talking about this, would Columbine even register on the news cycle today? I don't know.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Wow.
I don't even know that it would.
We had 18 since January. Is that a correct stat?
From what I've heard, this was the 18th this year.
That is shocking.
Yeah, and so I haven't even heard about. I heard there was one in Tennessee and there was one in Texas, but those are only one of the ones I knew about, and those happened sometime in January. But where are the other one? I didn't know, and so it did not even break the news cycle, and so I wonder. Anyway, so back to the question: is this different? Maybe, because you've got students who are exceedingly vocal about their experience and their anger. I shouldn't say exceedingly. That's not the right term. They're exceedingly confident in their ability to speak out about what happened. Let me say it that way. Yeah. And their desire to try to impart some sort of change. And so they are holding rallies. And again, the conspiracy people out there running, the leftists are trying to get the kids riled up, and they're not doing this on their own. No, these children are doing this on their own. They are angry. They have, and they've published video of the bullets going off. And one kid said, I did this because somebody was criticizing. Why'd you video that while the guns were going off? Because I wanted to document, if I didn't live, I wanted somebody to be able to tell this story. This is what was happening. And so don't you think that most activism in our country historically has come from the youth? You just talked about civil rights movement. We just talked about
or women.
Well, but right. Okay, so but I mean, when the youth gets engaged historically, there tends to be this moment of tide shift, right? And so we can look at that in revolutionary processes around the world, and it's usually a sort of a youth-led, if not a high school age, but maybe college age. And these kids are very close to that. And besides that, a lot of these kids are either just about to be voting age or are. And the idea that at a certain point in time, when the adults don't do something, the youth are going to have to sort of step up and try to say something, do something. And so I'm sure that they've got some guidance from some adults in their lives, but at the same time, it looks like a lot of them who are actually voicing this out and pretty much calling people out for BS, saying, I'm sort of taking off what one of the protest girls said, like saying that this can't be a conversation, saying that we can't do something about it, saying that we can't find some sort of rational solution to at least ebb this.
Right.
You're not, the idea that you can create a 100% safe environment everywhere across the country all at the same time, like that's a ridiculous thing to think.
Should the national government do something? And I don't want to talk about what they should do yet, but is this a state by state thing, or should nationally this has become an epidemic over the last 10-15 years? It's time for the national government, led by the president, with Congress.
I think that that a federal conversation can lead to states having the ability to figure out what they need to do. So I don't know if we need actual, congressional legislation from DC, but somebody needs to have a open and honest dialogue about what is happening and how we can reasonably come to some sort of conclusion on how to slow it down. I don't know that it'll ever stop, because I just don't. I mean, I just don't see that. I don't know that you can ensure someone's safety 100% of the time, every single day. But at the same time, to say that we can't do anything is equally stupid.
Well, it's interesting this time because we just had the worst mass shooting in American history.
In Vegas.
And this was so close. And when that happened, of course, like normal, Democrats and a lot of gun control activists came out and said we need to do something. The Republicans backed off and said this is not a time.
Yeah,
it's time
don't
for
politicize it. Let people grieve.
This happened so quick that I saw a lot of Republicans squirming. They didn't want to be repetitive and say, oh, this is not a time. Because at some point, maybe some action, and I'm not talking, it could be a form of more gun control. The most intelligent people I know that talk about this logically are not take all the guns away.
Right.
They're not extremists. There's some sort of middle road. There should be some sort of common ground, because both sides, no one wants to see this happen.
I was thinking through sort of American gun culture, and other countries really go, well, I can't believe that they would, and the common sense would be to take it all away. Okay, fine. That's their perspective. And you and I have talked about this a little bit before. American gun culture grew up on the idea that we were realistically living on the frontier every time we moved outside our doors in the early days of this country's history. And besides that, I had something else in. In Europe, they never had gun culture because hunting was not a right given to common people. It was strictly regulated to the upper classes, to the nobility. You had to have, hunting laws, gaming laws. Hunting wasn't a right. In America, it's always been a right and a necessity. And so our entire history has grown up with the idea about defense and being able to find food and being self-sufficient. And that's really ingrained into our fabric of our national identity.
That's true.
So so being able to say, well, we're going to strip that away, that's not going to go well. And I don't think it's even plausible.
And we needed guns with how massive our country is,
okay.
The frontier.
And we needed a militia. And so that's part of the reason why
But I will say this, colonial times and even into America, there were gun laws forever. It was illegal to sell guns to Catholics for a while. Well, it was illegal to, let African Americans have guns,
Yeah, no, I didn't say there weren't any restrictions. I'm
just
saying that, but you can see why it's ingrained in who.
But that's changed. Yeah, I think gun laws should not be looked at as sacred.
I know that people want to hunt. Fantastic. I know that people want to be able to defend their homes and their family. Awesome. I also know that a lot of people who think that they would be able to handle, a weapon in a crisis, who are not trained in police response or military response, would be a detriment statistically. Those people who are like, well, I'm going to pull my gun and stop that robber. You're actually probably more likely to hurt yourself or somebody else, right, unintentionally. So that's not a very good argument. However, the idea that anybody can get a gun at any point in time, and then we think about the shooter here, and they've spent a lot of time talking about him, and somebody said, well, we're not trying to go after law-abiding citizens. Okay, well, let's talk about this. This kid had some problems, and he did have some mental problems, and he had some run-ins with the law. Okay, cool. But until he actually pulled the trigger on these kids in this school as a gun owner in this country, he was a law-abiding citizen. If you just look at it from that perspective. So he bought these guns legally, apparently. And people around him tried to make sure that he had them in a gun safe and whatever. So you never know exactly what's going to take place. Do we need semi-automatic weaponry? I don't know. There's an argument. I know people who I talked to a guy today, matter of fact, who said that he lives out in a more rural area and he has crops and things. He has other animals on his farm, and rural hogs are an issue, and he has to be able to. And they're aggressive. Like he needs a pretty large weapon to be able to take those things down. But that's not everybody. So I think that a more logical approach would be in a case by case sense. Let's look at who needs what and why, and slow down that process. And it's not like you're trying to take all big caliber weapons away or all. Right. See what I'm saying? So there has to be some sort of common sense approach to. Maybe the background check thing is the thing, and I will agree with the people who are sort of on the right side of this issue about mental health services. But what we've seen happen, especially with this administration, is taking more funding away from things like mental health services, and so so you're kind of talking out both sides of your mouth when you're saying those things. Like, let's really do both things. Is there an answer? Probably, but we have to stop yelling at each other long enough to sit down and really think it through.
Yeah, and I think that's what people are looking for is some action. And maybe the first step is to have a real deal agency, bipartisan, to research this issue.
Right. Calm down and think about it. We are intelligent people.
Because, we don't. And Trump, to his credit, seemed open-minded about this. He seemed like he was willing to make some talking
about changing the ability to modify the weapons into fully automatic.
Things like that.
Yeah, right. So,
but I do think we need a full-scale research of experts into this thing, and let's see if we can figure out whether it's helping students with emotional problems or some sort of common sense gun laws.
Whoever it is, it's got to be. It's so complex. Yeah, but that doesn't make it impossible.
Right, but I think action now is required. I think the worst thing we can do is do nothing again.
The people who are going to jump up on the left and go, let's ban all guns, are unrealistic.
Right.
And all they're going to do is create animosity from middle groups and right-minded, and I mean right-sided politics minded. All you're going to do is create animosity, and that does not create good dialogue. Like, you can have your opinion about that, but let's be civil. And again, people are hurting, and I get that too. And I'm not talking about the kids who are screaming, and that's an emotional outlet, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, my friends were killed, and this. Like, let them have that moment, and that is part of their grieving process. But don't be offended by that. Don't be offended by that. If you're a gun advocate, don't be offended by their grief, right?
Right. And the people on the right who are screaming we should put a gun in everybody's hand and arm the schools to the teeth.
I don't get that either.
That's not the way either. There is something in the middle, I would assume. But I think, like I said, action of some sort.
It's interesting. Both sides want safety. Both sides want security and order. But they are going about it completely different, right? One side says get rid of all of them. And I'm going to the radical sides of both these arguments, right? One side says get rid of all the guns. The other group says let's give more people guns.
Yeah.
And that you got to find some way forward that's not either of those two things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we won't solve it here, but hopefully people will keep their heads and we'll figure out something. All right. We're going to do a new segment. It's called Folks You Should Know.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick out a couple people. We're not going to spend long, 2 or 3 minutes on each person.
Yeah.
And who is your folks we should know for today?
All right. And this is a guy that I didn't learn about him until I was an adult, and we just talked about him in class, so that's why he's kind of fresh on my mind. The leader of the Haitian Revolution, a guy named Toussaint Louverture, is one of my favorite dudes because he was a former slave, gained his freedom, got an education, became a politician/military guy, and worked through a revolutionary process, at first through a diplomatic sense. It comes along about the same time as the French Revolution, and they're going through times where they go, well, hey, freedom for all men, equality, and this and that. And he goes, hey, slavery, hello, over here, right? Okay, how can you say that you're for freedoms when obviously there are people who are absolutely, entrenched in this slave system? It's not going to work. And so they're like, oh, well, you're right. And they actually gave him some support. They overthrow the planter class that was there. It turns into it's a violent revolution, but then the revolutionaries in France give them their support, free the slaves fully. Spain was on the island as well, so they had to combat with that. England shows up, and this guy helps lead them forward and creates a pretty interesting new system. And it's constitutional. He's going to be their leader. He's got support from Europe now, and so they become the first group outside of the United States to gain freedom from European control. But then the Napoleon story happens, and Napoleon's going to bring back slavery there. This Haiti and it was called Hispaniola, the island itself, encapsulated, was one of the most. It was the wealthiest sugar and coffee producing island in the Caribbean. Whoever controlled it stood to make lots of money. Napoleon wanted it back. So we go into another round of revolution. Louverture is actually arrested and taken to France, and where he's going to be put on trial, but they don't actually make it. He ends up dying in prison. But the revolution, he becomes a martyr for them. This guy Dessalines, who was his sort of co-general, if you will, is going to lead that revolution forward, and it turns into an ugly story. The warfare goes to total war, but they end up formally getting independence by 1804, same year that Napoleon becomes emperor. But without this Louverture guy and his leadership and his stability and his sort of, even though it seems radical revolution, but at the same time he's a very moderate, forward-thinking guy. And here's what we need to do next. And we study some of the literature from him and the letters that he wrote in my AP classes. This guy's awesome. He's one of my favorite people who I had never heard about as an adult, and so I try to make it a very serious point to make it much more. I try to make a point and an effort to get across why I think this guy is pretty awesome.
So he led the
Haitian Revolution.
The only completely successful slave rebellion in history, where they took over the actual country and kicked out the imperialists.
Exactly right. And why that was never told. Nobody ever told me about Haiti's history when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I could speak for the next 30 minutes on how that affected the United States, because slave owners were looking, hey.
Yeah. When Napoleon lost, that aspect too. When Napoleon lost control over Haiti, then immediately he turns to the United States, who shows up about the same time trying to buy New Orleans, and he goes, well, hey, how about the Louisiana Purchase? And so that became a thing. Guy, Louverture is responsible for freeing this island, an island, by the way, against 3 major European powers. No one's ever done that. And then he's responsible ultimately for the United States doubling its size and becoming more powerful. So anyway, thanks to him.
Yeah, that's a huge influential thing. I talk about that as well.
Yeah.
My person also goes along, by the way, with Black History Month.
Okay.
Even though Toussaint Louverture was not American. Mm-hmm. This guy his name is Benjamin Banneker. Have you heard of this guy?
No.
He is an African-American, not very well known. I only discovered him once again as an adult. He was born a freedman, virtually no education, taught himself to read and write, and is considered by most a genius. Such a genius that he became good friends with Thomas Jefferson, invented the first real-deal wooden clock that struck on the hour, and apparently worked even after his death and continued to work, based on a pocket watch that he had. So he produced a series of almanacs. So here's a person who, of African-American descent, was held down in our society, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that race had nothing really to do with intellect. Mm-hmm. Yet a slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, hires him to, help him. And they correspond back and forth because Jefferson really wants his ideas on certain things. So it's interesting to see that dynamic with an African-American in American history. But Benjamin Banneker, he is considered one of those iconic figures that people have forgotten about, but has proven, that race is just this thing, that has, and I know there's studies that show all sorts of stuff, but Benjamin Banneker was a kind of an icon for colonial and then early American African-Americans.
Nice.
So there you go. All right. That is the podcast. Don't forget, on March the 1st, we're going to be at Collective Coffee in downtown Hot Springs.
That's right.
And we're going to play a little music and all that. So until next time, see ya.